Greetings everybody and welcome back to Tram with a Cam. I am Tram and today is another toy review. This one is going to be a little different as we are approaching Halloween. I decided this year that I was going to make my own costume which would incorporate a homemade lightsaber. I do believe the end result was kind of cool. However, in the process of making this lightsaber, I came across, or I should say I picked up 3 other lightsabers to get some ideas of different, and each of these are different varieties. A couple of them are licensed, or I believe they were licensed at one time, Star Wars lightsabers, and one of them is a very generic saber sword, light sword, whatever you want to call it, that you usually find at like the fair and whatnot. So I'm going to show each of those. So I don't have a package for any of these, and all of these were picked up at like the Goodwill or a thrift store, and roughly each one of them cost about $2 a piece. Their initial cost, I couldn't tell you. Anyway, so I'm going to start off with the first one I found, and by far the cheapest, which is actually only about $1.50 I think, and it's this very silver one. The black is actually tape because it started to break apart. I've opened it up to look on the inside of it. But anyway, it's got some nice detail, but otherwise it's just one big plastic body that the different designs and stuff are etched into, which gives it kind of that cybery look to it. But without any distinguished or different colors, it looks actually kind of plain. Yeah, your buttons here, only one of them technically work, and I don't know if that's because I've opened this thing up or not. Anyway, that will light up the blade, which I'll show you here. Well, I won't turn it on, but I'll show you. Oh yes, this is why it was so cheap, is it did have a dent in it, and it goes through all the way through, as you might kind of see. The middle bit of the blade is actually, I guess it's a. What is it? I can't think of the thing, but it's a thin plastic, almost clear plastic that was wrapped several times, which creates a pretty nice looking blade. Not much to say other than it lights up and does sound, and I will demonstrate that here in just a second, standing up, so you can see distance-wise. The entire thing, I should say, the blade itself is, if I remember when I measured it right, it was a foot and about 2 feet. Foot and a half. Crap. I had a ruler and measure anything around here. Anyway, yes, it was no longer than 2 feet, so you got a grand total of maybe 3 feet with the hilt. And I will demonstrate what this looks like and zoom it around for you. I will say before I turn the sound on, is that by me digging it open and opening it up and seeing how it all was put together, I did end up breaking one of the wires. So the sound's kind of off. You'll notice it continue repetitive, almost like you're swinging it noise. That's because it thinks it's in constant motion. But otherwise, it does actually still turn on even after I've been messing with it this whole time. Anyway, so cut to me swinging this thing around like an idiot. And we are back with the next lightsaber, and this is I like to call, it looks like it was Darth Vader's lightsaber. Indeed, it has a red blade. This one is fairly simple, and I'm pretty sure at this point pretty old. It looks like one of the early Darth Vader licensed. Yep, let's see, there is actually things on here. The text, which I'm not sure if you'll be able to read. We'll do that. Anyway, Darth Vader lightsaber. It is number 570. The PROD date is February 11th, no idea what year, but yes, so it's got this thing. I'm not real familiar with what the technical terms are for everything, and yeah, it's fairly bulky. I mean, I've got some actually decent sized hands, and both of my hands could fit on this, so for a child this would be huge. One thing I like is it's got a nice little metal ring there for a belt clasp or something like that. And then you got your blade, and they added something else where a lot of flip out swords I've seen in the past where the blade would just fall out right now, they have this little black bar that can be pushed out of the way to let for an extendable blade. Speaking of which, this one is again being used. It is kind of crooked. You might be able to tell there. It's cool if you can get it lined up so it lines up nicely and it flips out and the curve actually works as sword. Otherwise, it looks just ridiculous like it does now. Oh, and this one does light up. There is no sound effects or motion sensing type stuff. You won't be able to see it too well, but it does light. A second. When you push that down, that'll turn red until you flick out the sword a bit, and then it'll go white. So, and then there's the on and off switch. One thing I will say that's cool about this design, anyway, I won't open it up, but if you take off the back here, the light mechanism inside of it is actually one little flashlight that you can actually pull out. I just thought that was personally cool, and I ended up using it for my own lightsaber construction in my design. But it was kind of cool to see that also used in a model like this. And yeah, that's about it. It's a pretty simple lightsaber. I will fling this around so you can see it full height. I think this one, the blade was almost 3 feet, if I remember correctly. So it's the medium of the blades that I have. And I can't say the light bulb really lights it up all that well. There's a slight glow, but we'll see here in a minute. I'll turn off the lights and you can see what this looks like in action. Alright, we will cut to that now. Alright, back with the final and the third and final lightsaber. Once again, Darth Vader's lightsaber. This one is huge. You may already be able to tell, but let me put in the last one that I mentioned was large. This is the other one I put in, and as you can see, size-wise, this one's a little bulkier, the other one we saw. So this is a little thinner, but it has a whole extra extended bit to it. It just feels really heavy. This one does have sound, and instead of just a little flick-on switch here for the light, it has a button here. And what's cool about this, and I'll show you why it has this button, I should say, in a second. This does absolutely nothing, and it doesn't have the white dots or crystalline thing or whatever that normally comes on there. So that's kind of off from Darth Vader's lightsaber. It also has, I guess, was an extra belt loop spot, but it does not see it. Whatever, I got this at the. Sorry, hold on, I'm rambling, having trouble thinking. Anyway, it looks like it might have gone on a tool belt or had an extender bit. That is missing, and I couldn't tell you what might have gone there. It does have that little ring bit, but this one is plastic and honestly doesn't feel all that great. And I wouldn't trust it on a tool belt. So I might end up using something like that. Anyway, and the blade is much thinner, and you can see coiled up there. And it doesn't have the black bit in there, but as you see, it doesn't fall out. There's a particular reason for that, and it comes back to this button. As you can hear the sound there, that'll get annoying, but as you can see, it actually has, turn that off. It actually has this little clasp, and that actually slides down into the tube, holds it in, and so it actually shoots out to full length as long as you're holding it, decently for it. It does light up, unfortunately, with as clear a plastic as this is, if you will. I mean, it does, you can kind of see through it, where the other ones are pretty solid, opaque, or is opaque the right word? I don't remember. Anyway, as the other ones are harder, you can't really see through, so they glow better. This one you can see through, so therefore you'll get little rings of light where the flashlight is hitting. Unfortunately, it's not very strong, so yeah, it's kind of pointless. Honestly, this would almost have been better off with just the sound and the extending blade, because yeah, you might have been able to see the flash, but it does nothing for the glow. The other cool thing about this I'll show as you close the blade. There we go. Ow. Ow, I think Okay, what's supposed to happen is not cutting your hand off and slicing it all to pieces, but when you shove it back in, it makes the turning off sound, which, I don't know, I thought was personally a cool little deal. And you can, of course, hit the button so that the sound, sometimes you can hit it so the sound doesn't go off when you extend, that's fine. Or you can hit the button, turn the sound on, turn the sound off if you want to with it still extended. Downside is if you do go to close it, sometimes it'll actually turn it on. Didn't do it this time. So it's just making me look stupid. Anyway, we will now cut to this being actually used so you can see in length. I believe this is by far the longest blade, and it reaches, I think the blade itself is nearly 3.5 feet long. So grand total with your extra long hilt, which is, like, again, like I said, it's massive. I mean, you can put 2 hands on this easily, and then some. And it's just really cumbersome weighted because of all this stuff. But I think the whole thing is nearly 4.5 feet long, so it's big. But by far, it is my favorite just because of the extendable blade thing. That's cool. All right, so I will cut to swinging this thing around, and I believe that'll do it for us for our Halloween special. And actually, you know what? I'm gonna show off my homemade one here in just a second as well, just because why not? It's a lightsaber special. And so this way, I will cut to that, and happy Halloween, everybody. I hope your trick-or-treating is delightful, safe, and you bring in loads and loads of candy. Until next time, I'm Tram.